I'm Jesse McAnally.
And I am Andrew DeWolf.
And welcome to Musicals with Cheese, a podcast where I try to get Andrew to like musical theater. And today we've got an extra special returning guest.
Oh, yeah. It's about time, too. I feel like it's been a while.
It's been too long, but also I see them a lot. So it's a little different. It's like we have our own thing going on, so it doesn't feel that long, but I love having them on. Please join me in welcoming the host and creator of Musical Hell on YouTube and so many other things. It's Christi Esterle!
Hey! Good to be back.
Yeah. Andrew is right. It's been too long.
It has been too long.
You've been on the show numerous times.
Yeah.
And you've never talked about a Phantom property.
No, I haven't, which is weird because I'm one of the huge, bigger Phantom nerds in Jess's circle, so.
You are. You actually liked the musicals, and I think you like all the musicals except maybe like the David Stoller.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of not just the musical itself, but the, story in general through multiple incarnations, which is why I'm really excited to be talking about our subject today.
And that brings us to our subject today, where we're going to dive into a time machine almost 100 years in the past.
Yeah.
We're getting to that point where the dawn of film is a century
Yeah, wow.
ago. This week, we are talking about The Phantom of the Opera for Phantom May, but the 1925 version. Cue the music. The Phantom of the Opera is a film written by, and this is a mouthful, Walter Anthony, Elliot J. Clausen, Bernard McConville, Frank M. McCormick, Tom Reed, Raymond L. Schrock, Jasper Spearing, and Richard Wallace. None of them are credited. This is why we have unions.
What the fuck? None of them are credited?
Not
even
a single
one person?
soul.
There was a lot that went on during the creation of this movie. There were issues, so.
Yeah, there was issues, but also, like, in these days, like, what do you write? Like, oh, he goes up the stairs, and then he makes a face, and then the title says this.
Yeah.
So I get it, but even at the time, they were trying to not credit Gaston Leroux because they assumed this book had no copyright, and then he sued, and he got money, and then died 2 years later, but...
Yeah.
But the film was directed by Rupert Juliet, who is the credited director, but there are several uncredited directors, including Lon Chaney himself, Ernest Lemley, and Edward Sedgwick.
So we got 4 directors, a dozen writers, didn't credit the original book, didn't credit anybody.
The early Hollywood was a mess.
This is one of those movies where you look at the process of it and you're like, it's incredible that it, came out as well as it did and holds up as well as it does. A lot of that, I think, is Lon Chaney himself. I cannot praise him enough. He is the GOAT of cinematic phantoms. I mean, we're talking scale. Lon Chaney is all the way up here. Then you kind of have this mid-level, which is like, Claude Rains, Charles Dance, Robert Englund, maybe Raman Karimloo if we're talking pro shots, and then like all the way down in the basement, you got Gerard Butler and Julian Sands. So,
Whoever played the kid in Phantom of the Mall.
I have opinions.
I mean, these are good opinions, and I feel like that's not like a hardcore one people are gonna fight you on. I feel like most people are like,
and
yeah,
also,
Lon Chaney's
also he's
the
a
best
local
Phantom.
boy. Also, he's a local boy. Lon Chaney was born and raised in Colorado Springs out here, and we do have a Lon Chaney theater in our old auditorium that deeply needs renovating. So
I'm curious if they were like in Colorado Springs to put a statue of Lon Chaney, would they make him the man or make him like one of his 1,000 of faces?
I would, you know what? If they were to do something like that, I might do something, where he's like holding his makeup kit, or, maybe have him, or maybe looking, maybe have him and maybe kind of do an abstract thing on the base where you have like all his different characters, because they called him the man of the 1,000 faces, and he obviously earned that. He not only did the Phantom, he did Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame like a year or two before this. He was London After Midnight. You've all seen the picture where he's got that big creepy grin and So he was a fantastic makeup artist. So
he was a great artist, but as most people who do bring critiques to Lon Chaney, like living in the age of the silent era, is that he had very little variety in characters. Like, he would never play the leading man. He would always play the weird outcast, and people thought like that was limiting on him. But I felt like he was so good at it. Why
he was
why
very
not do
good
it?
at it. I mean, this, this is he's, there's a lot of, silent movie stuff in there, kind of like Kathy says in Singing in the Rain, where they're doing all the dumb show stuff. There's a lot of that, but he does some fantastic subtle work in this. There's a scene near the end where, they've got the scorpion and the grasshopper thing where, he tells her, tells Christine, if you're going to marry me, you turn the scorpion. And if you don't want to marry me, you're going to turn the grasshopper and blow up the entire opera house. There's a moment where she reaches for the grasshopper and you can just see him tense up. Like he's going, oh my God, would she really rather do this than be with me? And it's just, that horror and, it's fantastic. I love him.
Though it is more of a choice than the choice at the end of the Weber musical, where it's like, either I kill your boyfriend and you end up with me, or you choose to end up with me and I don't kill your boyfriend. What's the choice?
Oh man, what a choice.
I think kill him, man. But the version of the Phantom of the Opera that has been submitted to the National Film Registry and is the iconic one is not one that currently really comes out. This film has been through a lot of development, and we have a very ugly version of it. The first cut of the film was previewed in Los Angeles on January 7th and 26th of 1925. Audience reactions were extremely negative and summed up the complaint of, there's too much spook melodrama. Put in some gags to relieve the tension. The 20s. And let's contextualize this. There has yet to be an American horror film at this point. This could even arguably said to be the first American horror film, so it was not something people were used to. But by March, the studio decided against the ending where the Phantom was basically redeemed by Christine kissing him and him dying of a broken heart. And they were like, no, we ain't doing that, which is now officially lost media. We will never see that.
Yeah, we've got some stills of it, but we don't have any of the footage, which I think is a shame. We do have a lot of, of the original cut, which is very much closer to the original novel. And there is, I'm terribly sorry. I've kind of coming on this very quickly, but I have not had a chance to look at like my collector's edition DVD, but there's like one that has like an earlier 1925 cut. I mean, it has the chase scene at the end, but it has a lot more of the original stuff in it as well, and it's really interesting to watch.
It's interesting because there's so many different variations. So Universal immediately started seeing red flags in their head as soon as like, oh, negative reaction, we can't do that. Our next Marvel tentpole Universal horror film is not doing well. So they outright canceled the New York premiere, and it was rushed back into production with a new script that focused more on Christine's love life. Rupert Julian probably walked away from the production or was fired at this point. In any case, he was no longer involved with the film. And to salvage it, they called upon the journeyman that is a journeyman, basically. They don't really know who it was. I think his name was Hoot Gibson, but basically all of that footage was cut out. Then Edward Sedgwick, who would turn out to be Buster Keaton's main cameraman, was assigned to direct and reshoot a bulk of the film, and the original screenwriters wrote new scenes at the request of Sedgwick. The film was then changed from the dramatic thriller that it originally was into a more romantic comedy with action elements, including a duel with Raoul and a new character called the Russian Count Ruboff, where Raoul gets shot but it hits his belt, so he survives. This version was more akin to a Buster Keaton film, much more comedy version. It's a great show of people that don't understand what they are. So they premiered this version in San Francisco on April 26th of 1925, and it did not do well at all, with the audience
why.
booing
They made
it
a
off the
comedy
screen.
version?
Yes.
Why would they? So, what's funny about the story? I don't even understand. How do you even make it funny?
But there is, in what I guess we would consider the not even the final one, because there was like one more where they added some sound stuff, but in like the one that's most common, they have like this random stagehand who's like doing pratfall stuff in several scenes just to add a bit of levity. He appears nowhere in the book. We don't know where he came from. He's just there to.
I'm gonna say he's the rat catcher. Fuck it.
Except the actual rat catcher does come in later.
Oh, you're right. Shoot.
Yeah, so he's not. He's just the funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
The funny man.
And the third and final version resulted with basically everyone editing together every version that they had until it was an ugly hodgepodge, including revising the ending where he gets chased by an angry mob. Mm-hmm. And this quote-unquote final version debuted September 6th, 1925 at the Astor Theater in New York City. And, it was well-received enough. People thought it was fine, but they really thought this was going to be a big kind of, like, blockbuster, so to say. The Astor was not something you rented just for small events. And that was where we were there. And then a few years later, they revised it again and added sound to it. Mm-hmm. They just got randos to voice over it. I think
Lon Chaney actually had died by that point.
Yes,
so he didn't live much past the advent of talkies. So
he did, and also, but they brought back Mary Philbin to do her own dubbing and all that. And Mary Philbin's her own can of worms. One of the more interesting human beings to ever live, from what I gather. And then that was what would existed as the print of the Phantom of the Opera, was a dubbed over version of the Phantom of the Opera that they turned the voices off of.
So the talkie version of it is now the version that's most common, but without the talking.
Yes.
More or 100%. Less, yes.
That's why when you turn on the Phantom of the Opera, when you see the free version on YouTube, it's just this weird static shot of a shadow walking around. There was originally narration and nonsense over that.
Why is there still title cards?
That I don't know. I wish I had an answer.
Yeah.
I had no good answer.
This one exists in that same weird area, almost in that same weird area as the Robert Englund movie, where it's like, okay, you can tell this kind of started as a, something that was more or less accurate to the book, but then the movie industry got in the way. Because, we've got the comic character, we've got Arthur Carew, who was originally, actually his character was originally identified as the Persian. For some reason, became this secret police guy named Ledoux. The woman who originally played Carlotta was now Carlotta's mother. It's very odd, some of the directions they took with this.
They gave it their best shot 4 times, and none of them worked out fully well.
So this film is, I can't even say it's really the only thing that's great about it is anytime Lon Chaney is on screen. Sincerely.
I think, he's fantastic. I think some of the production values also hold up very well, apart from, Lon Chaney and his makeup. There was, back then, they didn't do a whole lot of location shooting because it was too expensive. It was just cheaper to build something in the studio. So they built like this entire replica of the Palais Garnier Auditorium on Universal Studio, and it stood for decades after that. I don't know if they finally tore it down or not, but it was around for
it burnt down with the big Universal fire that happened in the mid-2000s. So that same thing that...
Yeah, so it's no longer there, but it was there for a long time, and they used it, I think they actually used it for the the Claude Rains, which I think was 43. They used it there,
yeah.
and they used it for some other stuff as well. So it was, it was just a magnificent piece of theater, set piece that they put on all the tours. It was a great bit of history. So that was pretty cool. There's, some good. I think the Phantom's house under the Opera House under the Opera is very reasonably well done for the most part. As dumb as the chase scene is, there's a neat little Easter egg where he runs past the outside of Notre Dame, which of course was a set that had been built for when he played Quasimodo in Hunchback of Notre Dame.
The rumor was that Lon Chaney was haunting that soundstage for years and years.
I think there was also a rumor that he had like a bench like somewhere in Los Angeles where he would just show up like waiting for the bus or whatever.
He's the Phantom of the soundstage for the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
Yes. I think people just like ghost stories, especially like connecting it to a figure like this.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, there's a Phantom and he's played the Phantom?
Yeah.
Where did they film all the boat stuff? Because that's what's interesting to me is they have all these sets with water where they're like running this little canoe through or whatever it is.
Yeah. I don't, I'm not sure. They probably had like, tanks or whatever that they did stuff like that like they do now. So,
I mean, yes, but also like I'm trying to imagine like there's no chlorine in that. That's just random water they have all filled with shit.
Yeah.
Like and Lon Chaney's going under there full head first and all that.
Yeah.
With like 90 buckets of clay on him.
Don't they have that scene where like a whole group of people is like running through that water?
There is, yes.
Who knows what's in that? There might have been an actual sewer.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me.
It was the 1920s. They didn't have the health regulations.
I'm trying to
have germ theory yet.
No. Everyone just, shat in the streets and then washed their hands on each other. What I do want to say is Mary Philbin often gets overlooked in this film because, like you got Lon Chaney really acting it up. Mm-hmm. She's probably like the best Christine to ever. Like she's not book
very
accurate,
good, and
but
again,
she's
she's doing some over the top stuff. But when she's doing, when she reins it in, there's some really cool stuff. I think the scene she does on the rooftop is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Especially where there's this bit where she and Raul are embracing, and he's got his arms at her waist, and she just kind of pulls him down. It's like, okay, slow down, slow your roll, dude.
And then, of course, you have the incredible unmasking scene where I don't think it would work if she wasn't selling it.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, and again, 100% classic there. I think we do have to talk about the makeup, though, because
we can't.
The long and the short of it is that he could not have done this if this had been a sound film. He had stuff pushing his nose, pushing it up. He had like some stuff in his cheeks that were hollowing it out. And he had the false teeth. So
he probably couldn't even talk and all that.
There was a lot going on where, you couldn't do that and actually be able to speak or sing effectively. There's, when they were doing the Lloyd Webber musical, they were, testing out some makeup with Michael Crawford, and, they tried some of that cheek padding, and he said it just made him sound like Marlon Brando in The Godfather, so that didn't work out.
One of the wildest things that I learned in my research that I never noticed, and now I can't unnotice, he doesn't have dentures in. He has a very specific way that he has the mouthpiece in, and it's not in his mouth, it's on his lips. So he's tucking his lips in, and it's glued to his lips.
Yeah?
So it always protrudes outward.
Right. Okay, yeah.
And that's horrific. He applied it all, and he says most of the effect of what people think they see is the coloration that he uses.
Yeah, there's all that big stuff, but a lot of what he did was very subtle shading and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently, the Red Death mask that he wears in the masquerade scene, apparently that was also makeup.
That tracks to me. Like,
so yeah.
How did this guy? How much time do you think he had to spend in that makeup?
Oh, definitely, like over 14 hours a day. It's not like this was.
Oh my God! Like just thinking about like his nose being pushed up like that for like a long period of time. That's got to be so uncomfortable. And if it's on his lips, he can't close his mouth, can he? Because it's like
not
glued
really.
on.
No.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
but that's what also makes like the horror moments really work. But like that iconic photo of him where he's got his arms crossed and all that.
Yeah.
Like I always looked at that and I was like, why is his mouth like that? And now I realize it's just because he can't shut his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So he also put like egg filling like proper to make his eyes look cloudier.
Right.
Like he was the real deal. Like Lon Chaney was made for this, and he was born to deaf mutes, so he had to learn to express himself non-verbally from a very young age, and no one did it better than him. The makeup is great, but have you ever done research into Mary Philbin at all? I don't mean to linger on her.
And now I'm dying to hear what you've learned.
So she was in another film, The Man Who Laughs, which is a Victor Hugo adaptation, and a bunch of silent films. She was like the face of silent film. Do you know her entire tenure? She was in dozens and dozens of movies. It started in 1921, and she retired in 1929 at the age of 26. And she was never in another movie again. She died at the ripe old age of 90 in 1993. She never married, but tried to marry one of her like closest friends who happened to have been Jewish, and her family was very Catholics. So she was not allowed to marry him. When he eventually died, he kept all of her love letters, and when she died, she kept his. I just, the more I read about this woman, the more fascinating I found her.
I did know that she her career basically ended with the talkies, which, you know, the Norma Desmond thing was very real. Obviously, there were a lot of people who were not able to make that transition for one reason or another. So,
but I don't think she tried. I think she just actively said, "I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm 26. I'm out. I am over the hill. It's time to go." Which makes, I don't know, like she fascinates me, and the more I think about her, the more I'm like, man, what an interesting human being. That being said, let's talk about how this is one of the most groundbreaking films of all time based on just cinematic advancement. So one of the first Technicolor films, like it has Technicolor scenes in it, including the rooftop scene and especially that Red Dead.
The Masquerade Ball, which is fantastic sequence. It looks great. So,
and then it also, for its release, had some of the first 24 frames a second footage that had sync sound for all the opera scenes, which is, I know it's ridiculous to say 24 frames a second with synced sound. Oh my gosh, the technology! But it was.
Yeah, but that's why you have that. Why you see so many films, silent films, and they haven't compensated for the frame rate, which is why they have that kind of jerky. Sped up feel to it.
And this, while it does in some points, mostly works. Like, my eye didn't feel confused by it.
Right.
And it basically started an entire string of a horror anthology that is still connected to things like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, The Wolf Man.
Yeah, this is basically the ground zero of the universal horror. I don't know if you'd even call it a franchise, but that entire umbrella of the classic, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Dracula, the Invisible Man.
Genre more than anything.
Yeah.
But
It created the American horror genre. While there was other things like, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and other pieces
yeah,
of
that
media.
that was German expression weird.
Yeah. This is just a proper spooky movie.
It should have more gags, I think.
And also the villain needs comeuppance. Come on. But they didn't. But the chase scene is not the only ending alternative to this movie. There's also another variation where he lets Christine go, and then he leaves a note on her doorstep like, "Hey, I'll always care for you," and blah 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 blah, and that's it. Which I think is a good middle ground.
Yeah.
Where, he doesn't quite die and get redeemed, but he also isn't quite like, murdered by a mob.
Yeah.
But who cares what we have to think about this movie? Like, it's time to compare our opinions to the real critics over on Letterboxd.com. It's time for reviews.
It's time for previews. It's time for previews.
It's a Letterboxd game. All right. If for those of you who have not been with us very long, this is a game where I'm going to read a real Letterboxd review. None of these are fake. To both Andrew and Christy, and they have to tell us based on the review alone whether it was a 1-star or a 5-star. All right. Are we ready?
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
All right, Christy, you're up first. Homeboy's mask is 1,000% scarier than his face.
I don't know. 5-star.
That is correct. All right.
Very scared of the mask, but not the
The mask
like,
is unsettling.
horrific makeup.
The
There
mask is
is
very
an
unsettling. Yeah.
uncanny valley.
And
But the makeup, though.
he's got like the barb, which is like the veil underneath, so you can kind of see his mouth under it and see that it's not quite right.
Okay. I still don't know if I agree. The makeup's pretty rough. But...
I don't exactly agree either, but it's a very unsettling appearance.
I agree. But at least you can see a human behind the makeup. I know what you're saying, Andrew.
Mhm.
But the fact that you can see like the human being underneath it all.
Okay, if that's what you say, that I feel like that makes it worse.
All right, Andrew, you're up next.
Okay.
Crazy Eric and his snorkel rack. Why does he have 2 snorkels? I was listening to a historian.
Question. Is like one of them a spare or what?
But when me and Christine want to go rat diving.
Well, I mean, yes, one is for Christine probably, but also maybe it is just a spare.
In case I lose one in my snorkel murdering.
I feel like that's a reasonable thing. Maybe one of them's for the rat catcher.
Maybe. I feel like he wouldn't give the rat catcher one. He'd say hold his breath.
So we're gonna go with 5 stars for noticing small details that they liked it.
That is a good tactic, and yes, that is correct. Christy, next one.
Okay.
The Phantom, smash or pass?
Oh, jeez.
We already know the answer to that.
Smash.
Oh, 1 star.
That is a 5-star.
Oh, okay. I guess, yeah, if you're going to smash or pass them, I mean.
It's actually more smash or blow up the opera house.
Well, yes.
With everyone inside.
You will smash or pass with me, or you will send him to his grave. All right, Andrew.
Yeah.
Shadows on the wall have always been cool.
Yeah, but that opening, though, maybe a little too much shadows on the wall.
What is blackness if not just a big shadow on a wall?
We're going to go with 1.
That is correct.
They do.
All right, Christy.
I gotta say though, there is some good shadow work in here. I mean, there's a bit in the opening where you have the ballet girls, kind of running around and freaking out, and then in the early scenes, the Phantom, only just appears in silhouette and shadow, and I think it's it's used very effectively.
I like the shadow of the guy that got hung.
Oh yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, the comic relief guy is just kind of raising a set, and behind him you see this, and then you see the feet dangling, and then it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's a good part.
I feel like more filmmakers today need to watch silent films to know how to do storytelling a little easier for themselves.
Filmmakers today are spoiled by, you just have everything.
They really
limitations,
do.
I think. Limitations
breed creativity.
You should almost put limitations on yourself on purpose when you're trying to make something.
Yeah.
You hear that, kids? Shoot at 10 frames a second.
10 frames. Oh, I see. You're trying to increase it to 12? No. 10.
But that's what the Dogma 95 movement was known as. They made a set of rules where no fake lighting could be used. It had to be on all handheld or consumer cameras. And all those films look like shit, except for maybe Dancer in the Dark, which still looks like shit.
Yeah. Well, setting limitations and setting strict guidelines of you're not allowed to do anything is 2 different things, I think.
Suppose that's true. I forget who's next. Is it you, Christy?
I think it's me, yes.
All right, next one. How did anyone think he had a gigantic nose?
Okay, I know what this is referencing, and I'm thinking probably because they don't get the. I'm guessing 1 star.
That is correct.
Okay, so what's happening is, again, opening scene with the ballet dancers. They're talking about the Phantom, and oh my god, he's so scary. And one of them says he had no nose, and the other one says, oh my god, yes he did. It was totally enormous. And they were like, wait, what? And actually, this is something that happened in the original novel. Was they were discussing different ideas of what they thought the Phantom looked like, and the guy with the really big nose was supposed to be the rat catcher who held his lantern up to his face, and it was all spooky and looked like it was floating in the air. So
I like there's like a title card, I think, where one of the people says nose, no nose, or something.
He
like
has
that.
no nose. Yeah.
But it is also enormous.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Joseph Bouquet telling them what the Phantom looks like, and he's holding like this creepy prop head and fiddling with the eyes the whole time. Another, really neat effect. So.
Yeah, but it's an anachronistic thing because the opera that head's from is not from an opera that would have existed in the time of Gaston Leroux, so 0 out of 10.
I'm not sure how you would know that. I mean, it's just like a random prop thing.
No, it's specifically from a specific opera. I learned it from a historian commentary, and I'm going to put it into my Cinema Sins video.
Ding!
Ding! And let's call it a tie, because let's move on. Woo! You both are equally good at knowing the crazy people on Letterboxd.com and for fun facts of Phantom of the Opera. On that note, how about we go into a mid-show, and then we can talk about some more songs. Hey guys, sorry to bother you, but today's show is brought to you by the extremely kind donations by our donors over at Patreon. So many things over at Patreon. I promise it'll pick up in June. It's just, I've been busy. I've been busy, kids.
June,
know the feeling.
June is busting out all over. Making this movie might kill me. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh, me too. I'd like to just fast forward to that part.
Yeah. No, like the man said, art isn't easy, so.
It isn't, but also I've basically lost a pound a day since we started, and it is honestly worrying me because now I'm down to like 28 pounds down.
Wow.
We need to eat some food.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great.
Start eating like burgers every day or something nasty.
I can't. When you're on set, you can't eat anything. If you eat something, then you have to go to the bathroom. Literally, someone says you have to tell someone if you're going to the bathroom. And I'm like, I'd rather you not know that I did that.
Just announce loudly, I'm going to take a shit.
You do it on the walkie. Just so you know, I'm going to take a massive dump. Big dookie.
It is poo-poo time.
It's not as bad as with actors who are 100% mic'd during the day. So any conversation, they can't have a secret conversation. They can't do anything. I'm going to hear it. They're going to hear it. They can't have a moment alone. So either way.
Unless they want you to hear it.
Yeah. Hear me bitch more about it in our private Discord chat, which is available on our Patreon. Andrew, who's currently supporting us on Patreon?
Our current patrons are Melissa Goldman, Danielle Renix, Jess the Stampede, Ewan Cassidy, Monica Thoreau, Brent Black, Lasaniel Stacy Coombe, Joseph Evans Green, Mary Lou Choquette, Jean Vanals, Russ Walker, Musical Hell, Emily Gracie, Kyle Summers, Janae C., Scoot in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, Liz Lim, Nothing is Certain Except Beth and Taxes, Thesbian, Raphael Martinez Salas, Jessica T., Mitchell Young, Chai Teacup, Katie McDonough, Chris Marcotte, Kiji Marie Anastasio, Leela, RJ Noriga, Charlie Brown, I assume, Bjorn Hermans, Toriana Frazier, Sammy the Most Lopez, Liana Morton, Kaylee Blazier, Cinemageddon Reviews, Villainous Miss, Sofina Ali, The Omega Geek, Paige Pearson, Maddie Wargle, Eliza Erdman, Anna Laskatova, Cheska Veray, Sarah Den Blaker, Evan Ball, Zachary Torres, Gathering Party Before Venturing Forth, Rora Marasso, Mara Forloin, Captain Rodtastic, Lisa L, Nobody, Renee Thomas, What Did Boris Say, Puffy Boy, Summer, and Julia Hardy.
They give us financial support that helps us keep the lights on here at Musicals to Cheese. If you would like to join them in supporting us.
Company.
Oh, yes. I don't know if you heard Musical Hell in there, but they're here.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they're better than you, in fact.
One of the early patrons. Honestly,
like one of the first, I'd say top 10%, yeah. Stick around. They've been here since day one. I love them all. They're all good people, and they have fun in our Discord chat. And they have fun in our Patreon meetups, and they have fun. Let's get back to the show. So, when we've been covering other things, like we covered the Phantom of the Mall, we covered the Robert Englund version, and we covered Phantom of the Paradise, we do a ratio of how much LaRue does it take. And this one easily takes the most LaRue. In fact, it would have taken more had they not taken the blades to it.
Right.
What do you think are the most daunting things that makes a Phantom movie, Christi? What do you think needs to happen for it to be a proper adaptation?
For it to be a proper adaptation, I think, basically, I would say you have to have a space which is theoretically haunted that turns out to be somebody who is basically pulling, the old Scooby-Doo trick where it's just like a guy in a costume or whatever. Preferably this person is disfigured in some way and usually has a, romantic attraction to a character in the film. I think those are I think that's the broad bones of the story.
That's if you want to include like everything, because I feel like you could cut out some stuff by being like, it has to be a music venue, It has to be somebody who wears like a mask and is attracted to a singer in particular, and they write music.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but then you lose things
then
like
you got
Phantom
like
of the
Phantom
Mall.
of the Mall and stuff, and like those
Phantom of the Mall.
oddball ones. So
Yeah.
Which I think that is a true adaptation. That actually has more LaRue elements than most adaptations. Honestly, I think the least LaRue adaptation is probably the Max Schell version. Where he's like, I'm just kind of your dad figure, whatever. All right, we're going to do that.
I'm your dad.
There is a lot of ones where it is a lot more fatherly. Honestly, I think that the Phantom the American Musical one is probably one of the least LaRue accurate ones too.
it is one of the least LaRue accurate, but it's one of those where it's like I love it, even though it's like completely off of anything that was actually in the original story. I mean, again, you've got the broad bones of the characters and the setting and the main plot points, but there's a lot going on there where it's like, okay, well, that's different.
I mean, different isn't bad. Let's just say
no, it's not. It's kind of like it's kind of like the Wicked the musical of Phantom adaptations. I mean, it bears no resemblance to what actually happened in the source material, but it's good.
So the 1925 Phantom,
yes,
this one feels like it actually keeps the mystery element to a point.
It does, yes.
Which is something almost none of them do. Pretty much every single one beyond this is just like, well,
and that's
everyone knows it's a guy, so it's a guy.
And that's kind of part of that is kind of built into the way it's written. Because if you read the original LaRue novel, I mean, the reveal of of who the Phantom is doesn't happen until like right around halfway through the book, and up till then, it's like, okay, there's all this weird stuff happening, but we don't know why. So it's a little like, both Dracula and Jekyll and Hyde in that respect, where the twist where it's a vampire or they're both the same guy or it's just this really ugly guy living in the basement. We get to this point where it's like, oh yeah, everybody knows that, so we're not even going to pretend it's a twist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a weird question for you, and Christi, you probably know this better than me. Has there ever been an adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera where it's actually a ghost? Like not a guy, but an actual.
They reverse the twist. They're like, what if it's a guy?
Oh wait, no,
it's
there
not.
Probably is, but I am not thinking of one right now.
Because if I were to make the Phantom of the Opera, if someone was like, "Here's $2 million," I don't even need like $20 million. Give me
Wait,
two.
Jess, is Phantom of the Auditorium?
Yes, that is
Oh my
the
God,
Goosebumps
you're right.
one.
The Goosebumps
Yes.
one. He does.
He's a ghost.
The
He is
kid's
a
the
ghost.
ghost at the end. A ghost at the end. So yeah, there is
That
one.
is the only one. That's
We
the
did it.
only
We
one
found it.
that turned the twist on its head to actually make it a ghost.
Okay, and there's actually an episode of The Muppet Show where there was supposedly a phantom in the theater, and the guy
Phantom
was,
of the Muppet
said
Theater.
he was murdered on his opening night by the critics.
Kermit, what the have a skull-like head, fiery green eyes, and a horse tail? I don't know. I don't know either, but it's right behind you!
Statler and Waldorf go hard.
The Muppet Phantom of the Opera. Come on.
That actually exists. There is like a book adaptation where it's Muppet characters.
That's wonderful.
So we don't have to make it up. Who plays who? We could just Read the book. It's in there.
Well,
Yeah.
the Phantom is Uncle Deadly, which is,
Yeah, that
who
makes
was the
sense.
original
That's
Phantom character in that. He's the one with like the kind of creepy long nose and stuff. And then, Piggy and Kermit obviously are Christine and Raoul. And I don't know who else, where it all
I feel
goes
like
from
Piggy
there.
should have been Carlotta.
Yeah, she kind of would fit into that role more, but I mean, it's Piggy. She is going to take the lead role every time, and she deserves it because she's the queen.
But that's what makes her Carlotta. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's funnier with her as Christine because then she has more screen time or book time or whatever. I get why they make that call, but also she is Carlotta.
Well, yeah.
If it were a proper movie, they'd hire pop singer XYZ to play Christine, and then she'd be Carlotta. And then, Ra would be normal guy, and then Uncle Deadly or Dead Guy or Uncle or Gonzo probably would be the Phantom. It's always Gonzo. They always pick Gonzo.
Has like a mask that like straightens out his nose or something.
I'm sorry, but this is one of my favorite Gonzo gags of all time, and it's the Star Wars thing where he comes in the Darth Vader costume, and Piggy's like, "Who are you behind that mask?" And he turns profile so you can see the nose. And well, you might ask. He would have to do that in a Phantom parody.
So back to LaRue. This has like all the hallmarks, and it has the chandelier
It has
crash.
more of the hallmarks than a lot of movies, and a lot of adaptations do. It has Raoul's older brother. It has kind of the Persian character.
Yeah.
In the original version, I think they did have Mama Valerius, who was basically the woman who took care of Christine after she died, or after she died. After Christine's father died, she took care of Christine. So.
And in the original version, they had the cemetery sequence with the skulls.
Yeah, they did have that. And then there was they have, the masquerade. They have the scorpion and the grasshopper and the threat of blowing up the opera house. There's the plot, the rough arc of the plot is very close to what happens in the original novel. So yeah, it's even chopped up. It is pretty darn close. It's the closest thing we've got so far. So.
Yeah, it needed more Count Ruboff, the Russian that challenges Raoul to a duel. I honestly felt that was needed. I don't know who this historian is, but on YouTube there's a full commentary on like the Phantom of the Opera, and he would just spit out the wildest facts about just people's lives. Like the Persian actor comes on screen, he's like, this actor was this person, and he was a giant alcoholic and killed himself 4 years after this. And then we just move on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that even true? Does he just make this shit up?
It's possible. I mean, I don't know anything about Arthur Caruso.
I just found like his very like throwing things away. So actually, I did steal the snorkel joke from him. He's like, and if you can see, there's 2 snorkels. I assume it's because he wanted a late night date with Christine to go snorkeling, but I don't know. It's just it was one of the wildest commentaries that I was gonna kick myself if I didn't bring up. Like he'd say good facts. Like honestly, he'd break down like the actual like things about that. But my gosh, like
what is this YouTuber's name?
Not a YouTuber. Like
it's not a YouTuber, so he's just putting out commentaries.
It's an actual historian.
Oh my god!
Mm-hmm.
Like it was included with the DVD box set. It was Scott McQueen.
Okay, this is incredible.
And he's an interesting fella. He's a film preservationist. What a wild person. What a wild thing. If it is on YouTube, I do recommend it. But strangely, he's doing a commentary on the sound version.
Huh.
Like the more I unpack what this is, it's strange. But it has Madame Giry. It has Meg Giry, played by, I believe, a nepotism hire. The actress that played Meg Giry lived to be 104 years old, dying in 2014.
Wow.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Carla Laemmle, who I believe is the daughter of Universal head Carl Laemmle.
Yeah. She's come up. She's spoken out a lot about this movie too. So.
And it actually takes place in France, where a lot of other ones are like, London. So let's talk about how the Universal ended up with the rights and making this film. Carl Laemmle went to the Opera Populaire, Opera Garnier, forgive me.
Yeah, the Popular is like whatever Andrew Lloyd Webber thought it was
Yes.
called.
And he met Gaston Leroux, and he's like, I love this opera house. I love this opera house. He's like, I wrote a book about this if you're interested.
Well, that's the thing is that this, I think this really is where, Phantom became, kind of fully integrated into, the pop culture lexicon, at least in the United States, because the book was, it did moderate business, but it wasn't like, a huge blockbuster.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how, like, this, I feel like this has more of a cultural impact on society's, like, impression of the Phantom of the Opera than even the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. I feel like this is going to live longer than the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, sincerely, there will ever be another adaptation as good as this?
You know what? It's really hard to say. It's possible. It's always possible. But I think, you have to get that right balance of, the terror and the romance and the tragedy and, kind of the melodrama of it all. Melodrama is very hard for people to do and understand. And this is a very melodramatic story. So people are, so you kind of have to find that a balance that this movie does. And I think that the best Phantom adaptations do figure out. So it's hard to say, there's people who've said that there is going to be a modern rework somewhere or the other. And
what would that be? Would they do like in modern day, or would they do it like in the time, like the 18?
See, my thing is, if you're going to do a modern adaptation of Phantom of the Opera, I think you have to go back to the original book, which is, not, almost like Dracula in that it's like, here's all these reports and interviews and things about this crazy shit that happened. And you got to turn it into like this kind of, mockumentary or found footage thing where like people are talking on Zoom or over their phones or recording, clips of stuff and kind of build it up that way.
Do you remember when they were doing the Universal Monster
Dark Universe?
Oh my God, the Dark Universe that never actually happened because the first movie tanked.
But do you remember the Invisible Man movie that came out like after that?
Yes. That was
good.
If
that was really good. If they did that for Phantom of the Opera, I think there's too much baggage right now though. Because if you make anything Phantom of the Opera, immediately there's the musical that people are going to compare it to. How do you push past that?
I just want a good version of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical on film.
Yeah, I mean they could do that first.
Keep waiting.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'll just be over here with like the 25th anniversary pro shot. It's not perfect, but it'll do.
I don't think it'll do. I don't love that pro shot. I don't understand why they made it the way they did.
It's better than the 2004 movie. Okay, just give me that.
I kind of like I'm back and forth on the 2004 movie depending on the week. I will enjoy it. I will hate watch it. I enjoy watching that more than I enjoy watching the 25th anniversary concert. I think is the best way to say that. Because there's so many stupid things in that movie that's hard not to have a good time. Like, I love when I can see the camera on the Phantom and Christine during Music of the Night. I love the weird sex doll close-up. I love, like, the wild masquerade choices.
Oh my God, the guy doing like the Frug or the Vogue or whatever. Like, what the hell?
The Jean Cocteau arms, which, speaking of Jean Cocteau, Rupert Julian, who directed this film, was accused of being a poor man's Jean Cocteau, stealing all of his tricks without understanding why they were used in the first place.
Huh.
And I can see that. Everyone basically described Rupert Julian as mediocre and impotent. And Lon Chaney despised him from the get-go. But his name is forever attached to this. Christi, I am curious what your Phantom ranking would be. I've asked Andrew, and he's already ranked this among this. I am curious what yours would be among all the adaptations you've seen.
Among all adaptations, I would put this, it's certainly the best filmed version.
Mm-hmm.
Best overall, I would say has to be like top 3. I would say. Top 5 minimum.
Behind like the Lloyd Webber musical and what else?
Yeah, it would probably be kind of, I'm not sure where it would rank above or below the Lloyd Webber musical, but they would kind of both be in that top tier, along with the original novel and let's see, those are the main ones.
Susan Kay's Phantom. You want a sexual voice Phantom?
What's the worst one?
The one just from reputation, the Dario Argento version.
It's so
Jess,
wild.
We're doing that. We're doing that soon, aren't we?
Next week, kids. Next
Oh,
week,
I'm going,
kids.
the rats. I am just going to leave it at that. And
Does he fuck the rats?
He doesn't not
there
fuck
is
the rats.
intimacy with rats involved. It is we do, and
I'm hyped.
and the guy's not even disfigured. I mean, he's just like this blonde. It's at least they tried in the Schumacher film. I mean, it was bad, but they tried to make try to say, look, he's hideous. It's like he's got a sunburn, but they didn't even try on this one.
Yeah, because Julian Sands didn't want to wear a mask. But they have a mask on the poster. Is the weird thing?
And his daughter is playing Christine, which is, there's all levels, that level of weird. So
there's a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on there.
So that's worse than Phantom of the Mall.
I think so, yes. I mean, when you're, goofy 80s slasher films are their own thing, so.
It's true.
The thing is, I've watched the Dario Argento film like over a decade ago. I've since looked at his other work and really enjoyed it. Like, I've watched Suspiria. I've watched Opera, which is a much better Phantom of the Opera movie than the Phantom of the Opera movie. Like, it's like everything you'd want from a Phantom of the Opera thing. It's modern, but whatever. But Andrew, it's everything you love about the Robert Englund movie cranked up to 10 million to be a horrendous thing.
The Robert Englund movie is honestly, a lot higher on my rankings than I would have thought, than you would think just hearing about it. Again, that's another one where it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure this started as, something more or less book accurate, and then they went, okay, why don't we turn it into a slasher movie with the Freddy Krueger guy?
Yeah, but time travel.
But time travel, I mean, it's got some fantastic sequences. Robert Englund is really good in it, and his makeup, again, pretty good. So
I think the only thing that holds the makeup back is that every time you see it, you're like, well, they're just trying to do Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's so grisly. Like they do
like
and
a partial Freddy, which
he
looks
doesn't
cool.
wear a mask. He puts stitches skin onto his face. That is
it's creative.
That is next level extra for what is a very extra character in general. It's
Andrew, why don't you remind us of your rankings really quick before we move on to our cheese ratings?
Should I just see? Do we want to move this one? Yeah, probably. I'm gonna move this guy up.
Meaning
a
the
bit.
Lon Chaney film.
Yeah, the Lon Chaney one. We're moving it above Phantom of the Auditorium for sure.
Right below Robert Englund.
Yeah, I can't say this one I enjoyed more. It's just a silent movie. It's hard to get into.
Fair enough.
I think it's probably really good for its time and revolutionary and all that, but you don't think of that stuff when you're just trying to watch a movie.
I remember when people talked about Rent and Us, and they were like, you just had to be there. It was important for the moment. You're like, I can't use that same excuse that people use for Pokemon the first movie on other media.
In A tier, I put Phantom and Phantom of the Paradise, and the first Phantom is the American musical. I just really like that one. In the tier below that, we have Phantom of the Opera, the Weber version, which I think is pretty good. And then the Robert Englund one after that, because I just really enjoy that one. Then Lon Chaney, and then Phantom of the Auditorium, which I think is underrated. That's a fun little thing to listen to.
Oh yeah, buy their merch.
Yeah, we have their merch. Honestly, below that, I put the Weber movie, but I haven't watched it in a long time, and even when I was ranking it, I was like, I'm not sure where to put this. So maybe it could go up, maybe it would go down. I'd have to watch it. It's been a long time. And then Phantom of the Mall, which just wasn't great, but it had some fun. And then at the very bottom, I put Love Never Dies because I just fucking hate that. I just think it sucks.
That doesn't even count. I am sorry.
Love Never Dies I kind of love that the same way I love the Phantom movie, where it's just like I will enjoy watching every second of that for pure hate watching.
I just really think it sucks. I really fucking hate it.
I saw that creative process happening in real time, where it started with the London version, which is just them trying to do Phantom again, building up to what it would become, and somehow both getting better and worse. Yes. It was fascinating.
Well,
at
and
any
then,
time.
it's based on like a book that Weber commissioned in the 90s, which is, just as terrible, if not more so.
Raul gets his balls shot off in a duel. It wasn't with Count
Raul gets his
Ruboff.
balls shot off, and that's why he can't have kids. By Count What's His Butt, I guess.
Yeah, me and Jess had a much better theory about CBT and him going a little too far.
No, Andrew, BPN's gonna kick us off. No CBT.
Love Never Dies. I don't understand why it exists, other than money.
It exists because Andrew Lloyd Webber has not had a really good hit since Phantom, and he's trying to go back to the well by writing the worst fan fiction ever.
Yeah, just fucking. I think I hate that one especially because I've talked to apologists like this guy over here.
I'm not even an apologist. I just kind of think it's funny.
Okay, well, that's fair.
It's objectively a funny thing that exists.
It's funny that it exists, and it's one of those things where
exists. I mean, it's got like the stupid "Hey, remember we had sex one time" song that goes on forever.
It's beautiful. Come on.
I just can't believe that she got the Phantom pregnant. It's so ridiculous.
It made sense dramaturgically. For that to happen.
The great song about the kid and his beauty underneath, and
oh my god, yeah, the song that you feel like you should have like the the guy who always jumps out at the sex predators coming on it saying
Chris Hansen.
Yeah.
Why don't you have a seat right there? You were thinking about this child's beauty underneath.
What were you doing there?
Underneath
what were you what was
exactly?
with the yes?
What did you take out that made him run away screaming?
Oh.
No.
And then poor Christine gets fridged at the end, and it's stupid, and she doesn't deserve it.
I have a pitch to how to fix Love Never Dies. I write me, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Get Jerry Butler and Emmy Rossum back.
Do we get to hear your pitch?
This is to Andrew Lloyd Webber alone. Make me a call. I have the pitch.
He has the pitch.
I actually came up with it while I was sick with COVID, and I've got it. I've got it in my brain.
I'm not
Jess
sure
is
that's
gonna
exactly
actually get this call. Weber's gonna actually call you. He's desperate.
I
He's
want him to.
You have something?
You've worked too hard on this. And I can see what you were going for, but no, you don't. I'm the only one that knows how to fix this. You don't even need to change any of the songs. You don't need to. I know. I have my structure away from this.
Everyone hypothesize on Twitter what Jess is fucking talking about.
You know what? I will make a full video in the style of fixing Harry Potter the Cursed Child if we make it to $1,000 on our Patreon. So write me, Andrew Lloyd Webber. I got it. I got the goods. Christi, this was absolutely lovely, but what is your overall thoughts on the Phantom of the Opera 1925 and your cheese rating?
It is, I think it's a silent film classic. I think, if you're a, horror fan, film fan in general, certainly if you're any kind of Phantom fan, you need to see this. Be particular about the soundtrack though, because I gotta tell this story before we wrap up. First time I saw this, I got a VHS with the soundtrack was done by Rick Wakeman of Yes. And it is, and I'm like watching the movie and I'm like, okay, this movie is really cool, but what the hell is up with this music? It is just like really weird stuff, overly synthesized with songs that have like really bizarre lyrics. If you ever find it, it's good for a laugh, but yeah, get a good quality silent film soundtrack to go with. Mm-hmm. And it's good. I would call it cheddar cheese. It's a good, solid, foundational form of the genre. So
that's a good one, and I also agree with that. I once saw this in a movie theater with 3-piece electric bass, like 3 different people playing electric bass
Okay.
to the film, and it did not work even a little bit.
No.
It's a beautiful film and like all that kind of stuff, but you know, it was a bit of a mess. But Andrew, what about you?
Watching this again, I watched this a long time ago with Jess, and this is the second time I've seen it.
That was our friendship starting, our blossoming.
Oh yes. It's got a lot of good stuff going on, but there is some dry spells where it's just kind of like, what am I looking at here? Like, what the fuck is happening? But when it gets going, it does get pretty good, and the makeup that Lon Chaney has on is impressive.
Yeah.
Honestly,
that's worth the price of admission.
Yeah, like really. So as far as like a historical artifact, and like just if you're a fan of how movies like evolved and developed and the Phantom story in general, I think you have to check this version out. Yeah, I think
agree.
it's pretty solid. Not much more to say. I think we've talked it to death. And so my cheese rating is I don't know. We're gonna give it a pimento. I feel like that's a fun cheese. Just fun to say.
I agree. I love this movie, sincerely. I love the imagery from it more than watching it. Like, I love the ideas that but it's not an easy watch. Like, it's not something you just turn on and lazily watch. You kind of have to actively engage with it, which is not everyone's favorite thing in the world. But what really works, like, I will revisit that unmasking scene very often. I will revisit that Red Death scene very often. But when it's just, you know, the manager's like, who's in the box?
The managers are really goofy in this one, even more so than the managers usually are. So.
Yeah, it was that part's like, all right, I'm not loving this.
It just keeps going.
And then, of course, it is lopsided. The historian points out that like 7 editors went into this over the course of making it, and none of it is coherent. And even at the time, people thought it was an incoherent mess because of it. Like when Raoul hears the Phantom and Christine talking in the dressing room, and suddenly he gives this like mischievous smile.
He gives like this weird little smile, like, isn't that sweet? She's seeing somebody behind my back. What's that?
Apparently, like, he was reacting to something else, like to a crew member, and then they're like, whatever.
Just edit that in. They're just like, whatever, fuck it.
That just goes to show like where the medium was at the time. And the historian is like, please don't blame this actor for having that response. He was responding to something else, and they just left it in. That is not his choice for that moment, I don't think. That being said, because of how lopsided this is, I'm giving a very specific cheese rating, which is shredded cheese, but you accidentally mixed in Mexican cheese and Fiesta blend and a bunch of other things together, where, you know, it's still cheese. Like, you got some, you know, just basic cheeses from different brands and all that. And it's still going to work if you spread it around on your taco, and you're still going to enjoy it, but it's kind of a mess. And it's a little dated, you know, it's been a minute, but you know what? Once it's melted, you can't really tell how bad a cheese is. That being said, Christi, this was lovely. I've missed hearing your voice and missed seeing your face.
Just, again, have to do it more often.
Of course. When Wicked's coming out, we're going to have a lot more updates there, and we'll bring you on for those. That being said, you have wonderful content
yes,
for people to find.
I am on
promote it.
YouTube. I am on, I'm on Twitter, and I'm kind of on Spoutable. I'm still on Twitter, as it, crashes and burns. I'm on Tumblr. So yeah, look me up on Musical Hell. I'm on Patreon, obviously. So
yeah, thank you, Christi. And I as someone on your Patreon, it is worth being on there.
Yes,
I love you very much as a human being and as just a genuine person. I am so grateful for your friendship and for you coming on. You know who else I'm grateful for, Andrew?
If I were to guess, you're probably going to want me to say our patrons?
No, it was going to be you, but then you had to be a little dick about it, and now it's going to be our patrons. Thank you guys for listening. Please follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher at Musicals with Cheese. We're on Patreon, Musicals with Cheese, Instagram, Musicals with Cheese. YouTube page is Musicals with Cheese. Patreon-only podcast is Patreon with Cheese. Come check that out. Email us at musicaltheaterlives@gmail.com. Our keeper of the cheese is Juliet Antonio. Christi, why don't you give us some ASMR as a little treat for Juliet Antonio?
I got nothing.
All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it then. In sleepy sang to me. Enjoy that. Our theme songs are created by Robyn, Nash of IOU Music UK. Thank you to the Broadway Podcast Network for having us on the platform and for not kicking us off because they have no nose. But it was also enormous. BPN does not have a nose. I know
Then how does
it
he
is
spell?
shocking.
Terrible.
This movie's pretty easy to find. Go it on YouTube. Like, it's on YouTube.
It's literally on YouTube.
It is the most accessible thing we've covered on here, aside from many slime tutorials. All right, we'll see you next time on Musicals with Cheese.
Bye-bye.
Or, like, what was the version I heard?